Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today we're back with another Heartland video as we do. Now for this one, I was looking back at the collection of Heartland videos I've done ever since the game was announced because, I wanted to cross-reference stuff. I'm always itching to talk about the game. It's my most anticipated gaming-related thing this year by a country mile, and I was shocked when I realized that I hadn't yet made a video on this specific topic because it's something that's been on my mind ever since we heard about the game. I mean, hell, probably I'm thinking about it ever since Division 1, honestly, and that is the notion of introducing an entirely new class of weaponry into the game. It's something that I was hoping for in Div 2. It didn't really happen, though there's one sort of exception, but I'm now hoping we're going to see it in Heartland, because I kid you not, I've seen more requests for this type of weapon specifically more than any other in my time here on YouTube or in the community. You may have guessed it, we're talking about bows, some badass compound bows. How sweet would that be? So I really just want to run through the logistics and potential balancing of adding bows to such a gun-centric game, as well as talk about how an addition like this could actually be advantageous to Heartland's brand and marketing, because yes, as much as I personally want to see bows in the Division franchise, I also think it could be a strategically smart thing to implement as well. In whatever way Red Storm may choose to do so, of course all of this is just hypothetical. But alright, let's dive into it, starting with the fun stuff, of course, the gameplay implementation of bows into the Division. So, at a first glance, the notion of bows in the Division might sound a bit odd, but when you think about it, is it? Regardless of how the gameplay of a looter shooter generally pans out, the Division are, supposed to be surgical, effective weapons. They get in, eliminate the threat, and get out. And I think bows are absolutely a useful tool that you could allow them to use. In real life, there are absolutely circumstances where bows are used in combat, and hell, in the game, there is a precedent for it. The Outcasts have a type of archetype in their ranks that uses bows. I'm sure we've all been hit with their exploding arrows one or two times in our time in the game. And one of the primary rogue targets in the Warlords of New York expansion, Javier Kajika, he used a bow, so there's absolutely a precedent in the game for them existing and being used in the type of combat scenarios we engage with. Not to mention, as I alluded to in the intro, we technically already have access to a type of bow in the game, that of course being the Survivalist Explosive Arrows crossbow. Now personally, I'm much more interested in the idea of seeing compound bows be introduced and explored, but if Red Storm were to want to expand the category to crossbows as well, I certainly wouldn't complain, and I think they could stand on their own as well. So narratively and lore-wise, it would make sense for bows to be added, at least from my interpretation, but what about from a gameplay perspective? Well, Frederick Thylander, who if you didn't know, used to be the lead gameplay designer on the Division 1 and 2. He was nicknamed the Gun Guy. He actually talked about bows on Twitter once. I can't specifically recall if it was myself who asked him, but somebody did, about the possibility and feasibility of bows ever coming into the games, and he said that they had actually tried to implement bows into the game at one point, probably early on in Div 2's development, but they ran into too many issues with the controls and camera of them, especially when the player was interacting with and bunkering into cover. That's my rough recollection of the conversation, at least. It was like 2 years ago, and I wasn't able to dig it up on Twitter because it was so long ago, so I apologize. But yeah, he said that while bows are in the game for NPCs, as I was saying with the Outcasts, it just didn't work out for players. So, one might think that that's it then, it ain't gonna happen. Well, he also gave a pretty similar statement about melee weapons, not verbatim, but he basically said that while NPCs get to use melee weapons, and there's a pretty wide variety of them across the Division 1 and 2, the devs were never able to devise a meaningful enough melee combat system to warrant giving melee weapons to the player, or at least there was never the time allowed to properly explore that development avenue. And while I'm not going to say anything here, if you've been keeping up with Heartland leaks, since May of last year, you might know what I'm talking about when I say that Red Storm seems to have been able to circumvent that issue. So, we've established that bows have a place in the lore and could potentially work in-game. Now let's talk about the fun stuff, balancing. How do you balance a bow among a gun-dominated sandbox? Well, I would argue that they'd probably function somewhere in between a rifle and a marksman rifle in current day Division 2, and honestly, I'd say their implementation into Destiny 2 is a great model and example of how it can be done. Back when they included those in Forsaken, which was like legitimately a huge motivator for me to buy the expansion, I'm not even kidding, I'm just a huge fan of bows, I guess. And while Destiny is first person, it's also a looter shooter with a sandbox heavily dominated by guns, but bows fit very nicely into the pantheon of weaponry in that game, and if bows were to be brought into the Division Heartland, I would expect them to be similar in function to a marksman rifle, right? Your precision and good aim is rewarded with high damage, not to the same degree, for sure. Marksmen should absolutely, in my mind, retain their status as the kings of single target damage. However, one of the pros that bows would have over them, I imagine, is their maneuverability. I think using a bow would allow you to ADS quicker, to snap back out of the animation and move into a sprint, all of that, and it would likely be more accurate or less punishing to use out of cover. In trade-off, however, while they would deal great precision damage, you'd have to contend with the draw time of the string, the travel time of the arrow, and its drop over distance, which could seem a bit overbearing, but I would really imagine this class of weaponry as having a bit more prestige and mastery to it compared to some of the other gun types we're accustomed to in the Division, and I honestly believe that they would just be a ton of fun. The crossbow is already fun to use in Div 2, and it's a spec weapon, so you hardly get to use it, but I would love to finally get the opportunity to actually have bows and or crossbows be a primary weapon in the Division. I don't know why, I just love them. But let's jump over to the last section here, and that is, while this is absolutely a very personally motivated video, I have no problem saying that I'm biased in wanting bows to make their way into the game, I do also believe that it could hold a strategic value for Heartland and Redstorm. How is that? Well, one of the best ways to market a new game or new content in an existing franchise is to offer players something they haven't done before. Like I was saying, bows were a big reason that I was motivated to buy Destiny 2's Forsaken expansion. And while we know the Division Heartland is going to offer us a new type of setting compared to the Division 1 and 2. It's suggested that it'll focus more on PvP than any other previous Division title, and it's free to play, so it has a lower barrier of entry. I suppose I'm not helping my case, but my point is new stuff in an otherwise older concept model can only help, meaning Heartland is still going to be the Division, and you never know what might be the tipping point between someone not trying it out because of that, or them going to try it out, and perhaps that could be bows. It could be a brand new, never before offered weapon class in the franchise. Division 2 took advantage of this by marketing their specializations and their power weapons like very heavily, and I could easily picture them doing the exact same thing with Heartland, or if there's already potentially new weaponry at launch to satisfy that allure to players, melee weapons, introduce bows with seasons 1, 2, or 3. That could be a huge draw for any players looking for something new once the game releases. Make a dope gameplay trailer, show agents using a brand new weapon class that wasn't in the game at launch. Bam, another instant surge and influx of players. I'm spitballing here, but I think you guys understand my point of how this could not only be a cool and fun thing for the game, but potentially advantageous for the launch or post-launch marketing of the game as well. Plus, it just kind of fits Heartland's vibe, you know what I mean? If you were going to add bows to a Division property, would you choose the game that's set in wintertime Manhattan, summer of Washington, D.C., or autumn in the Midwest? It just feels like a type of weapon that would fit with the theme, fit with Heartland's vibe, and it would spice up the marketing and gameplay of this new free-to-play Division game, which is obviously new territory for the franchise, potentially drawing from a new audience, and bows would just be dope. So that one is my own reason. I have no shame. Give us bows in the Division Heartland, and I guarantee you my hype meter, at least personally, would go even further off the charts from where it's at right now. Thank you all so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe with notifications on to be updated every time I upload. Let me know your thoughts on the idea of adding bows into the Division Heartland. Do you agree with me that A, it would be dope, but also that there could actually be some advantages to introducing a new weapon class of its type into the universe? As always, I'll be super curious to hear your responses, along with any other Heartland thoughts or ideas you may have. I'm always down to talk Division, and especially Heartland. Really can't wait to get more information on the game. If there's any Heartland topics you ever want me to cover, certainly let me know, and I'll do my best to accommodate. That's going to do it for me today, though, everybody. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and until the next one, guys, RogueGold out.